What is up, everybody? Welcome into New Pod here on notfest.com. As always, I am Joshua Toomey. That is Ro Coley. We have Adam Ramey of the Dropout Kings coming on momentarily. But first, we got to dive into Ro's Sick New World trip, man. How was Sick New World?
It was crazy. You know, I was going to say something stupid like it was a sick new world, but that's now I said it and now it's out there. So it was a really it was intense to say the least. I'll give you sort of a breakdown. My wife and I we ended up driving that day, so we drove the 4 hours to Vegas. And I knew we were going to miss a few of the bands in the beginning. Right. But unfortunately, when we got there, we actually scored some amazing parking, thinking we were like right in the right place. But stupid us, instead of looking at the map, we asked one of the security guards where the entrance was, and they sent us in the entirely opposite direction. So we missed Lacuna Coil, we missed Kitty, and we missed Coal Chamber, but we could hear them perfectly fine. But we had to walk literally all the way around to where it finally was. It was a hot day. It's funny though. I was reading like people's comments on Facebook and stuff like that during the day, and people were like, "Oh, it's so hot." And I'm like, okay, number one, it was hot, but for Vegas, it was perfectly comfortable. Like it wasn't so like it wasn't Houston in August hot by any means. Like it wasn't this like 119 degree heat. You know, it was in the 90s. Which isn't terrible for Vegas, you know, but the way people were bitching and moaning about it, I was like, get over yourself. God, it's not even the summertime yet. So anyway, but it was hot. There's no doubt about that. And the good thing was that there were water stations everywhere, you know, so it's not like you were like, you know, kind of bereft of that. There was definitely, you know, a fair amount of concessions and whatnot. The stages actually were, I mean, so the two main stages, I think it was at the purple and the green stage, I believe it was. They were right next to each other, but it was one band at a time. The sixth stage and the spiral stage, I think it was. Those two stages were close, and when I saw them, I was like, how are they going to do this without it like bleeding into each other? Right. But it actually worked out really, really well. They weren't too far from each other, but it was almost kind of like they were sort of positioned sort of outwards. So, so it actually, you know, so if you went to watch Ministry at the spiral stage or whatever stage they were on, the opposite stage while it was still going on, like you really didn't hear that stage. So I was really, really amazed with that. But it was a lot of back and forth. I'll tell you something, man. If you had your Fitbit or whatever on you, man, you got your steps in. There's no doubt about it. Right. When we got in there, who did we see first? I'm trying to remember who we saw first. But you know what? I honestly can't recall who we saw first. I do know that we missed Mr. Bungle, and that was a bummer. But I mean, some of the same thing. When we were walking finally to the right part of the entrance, we could hear them and everything. But I knew that as soon as we got inside, it was going to be done. And it was a bummer to miss Coal Chamber. I was really excited about that. But I mean, the bands themselves, I mean, everybody was really, really great. I'll just kind of give some of the highlights. KMFDM was amazing. They just played last night in LA, but I really didn't have the wherewithal to make it to it. Last week for me, I think it was 9 shows in 10 days, including Sick New World. So I was a little fried for the week. But KMFDM was awesome. Ministry was crushing. They played like 3 or 4 new songs, including a song called "Goddamn White Trash," which was amazing. But they called out the organizers and called them incompetent because they got 2 songs cut from their list. Wow! Because it seemed like everybody was started to run about 10 or 15 minutes late. So it started to sort of. That's what kind of, in my opinion, that's not that it fucked it up, but it was like that's sort of what ended up kind of being kind of weird because then you couldn't, like, if you were like, oh, well, we'll stay and watch whatever Korn for 20 minutes and then we'll go see this band. It no longer kind of evened out, you know, if you planned it the way you wanted to plan it. So it was a lot of back and forth walking all day long. Who else did we see? I mean, you know, Korn was really good. I mean, you know, Deftones was really awesome. Trying to think of who else we saw. Sisters of Mercy at the end of the night blew me away. I'd never seen Sisters of Mercy before, and I was really, really I just didn't know how it was going to be. You know, I didn't know if it was going to be like, oh, it's like old goth or whatever, but they really did it. Oh, you know what? When we got there, Turnstile was on, and they were amazing. They were so good. It was just that young vibe, man. And I know that's a weird way to put it, but it was just such a cool thing to see this kind of band that like pulls from all these influences that probably me and you really grew up with, and then, you know, including like kind of like a Glassjaw kind of vibe, and really just kind of brought it there. And just the kids are so into it, which I was so down with. Spirit Box was awesome, although while I can never remember the lead singer's name, I think you told it
Courtney.
Courtney. I wanted to say Candace, and I was like, that sounds wrong. But she had like a weed baseball hat on, and like a big, like she was wearing like this like over, like it looked like an extra large like t-shirt from like a dispensary out there or something like that. But it was just really weird. Like she just looked kind of frumpy. It was just so weird. She was like wearing this like black hat and black shirt and like the sun, but it's like everything just looked kind of frumpy. But I mean, but they were still amazing. She's got such a great vocals and everything like that. Who else do we see? Yeah, we missed all those earlier bands like Scowl and whatnot. My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult was awesome. That was kind of it, man. It was this the like what I was calling like kind of like this dance industrial kind of thing that was going on. So you really did have these like new metal-y kids with their Junkos on and whatnot, or you know, their big old shorts and everything. But then you had like, you know, just like what I call aging goths and aging industrial heads, you know, like kind of, you could tell like, you know, just gray hair and all these kinds of things, you know. I mean, not for nothing, I should be looking like that too, but for some odd reason I don't. You know, but it was just like, so you had this really cool conglomeration of people, this really cool a melting pot of people of like old and young, but you also did see like people with their kids and whatnot, and that was definitely, that's one of my favorite things. I love, and I mentioned that in the first one, where I love when, you know, like at Comic-Con, when you have a whole family that's dressed up as like Jawas and whatnot. It was kind of like that too, where you had, you know, mom and dad are wearing, you know, Ministry shirts or Sisters of Mercy, and then the kids got like a System of a Down shirt on, but everybody's just, you know, and that was a cool day. It's almost like being on one of the metal cruises and stuff. It's almost like the judgments sort of stop at the door. You know, nobody's gonna be like, oh, great, another Deftones fan. You know, like there's everybody's there and everybody wants to watch it and really enjoy. You know, and that's why for me, like bands like Skinny Puppy, Ministry, you know, Thrill Kill Cult, like all these bands from my mid '90s years, you know, going to shows, it was like so awesome to see not only the people who were there at the same time as me really getting into it, but like seeing these like young kids just like totally rocking out and totally digging it. And, you know, you can definitely tell that they all made some new fans there for sure. Unfortunately, we missed Body Count. I think they were on during Deftones. And my wife was very, very much wanting to watch them. Or it was no, I think they were on during System. Fuck, I can't remember the lineup now.
Yeah. I'm looking at it. Yeah, they were on during System.
Yeah, so She Wants Revenge. She Wants Revenge was good, better than what I recall, but we didn't really stick around for that. And then when you start to get into like your headliners, right? Your Deftones, so Incubus for me, as I said before,
you love them.
I did. I really loved them, man. I saw them so many times during Science, and it was always the most fun. And, you know, they just all looked like they were having such a good time. And I love that they have their fans. I'm never going to tell somebody like you're stupid for liking Incubus or anything like that. But it really is. It really is a bummer that it feels like it's like there's just a level of fun and playfulness that I feel like they just don't have anymore. We did check out that 100 Gex band.
Okay.
My stepson was very much like, dude, you got to check him out. And we checked him out, and I was like, I could see how he'd be into this. It was very much, it was like this like auto-tuned rap, kind of thing with a little bit of metal mixed in. It was just two guys, but it just didn't work for me. It was one of those things. I was just kind of like, I was watching him, and I'm like, I don't know, when I hear something auto-tuned, especially if it's like, it's one thing if a band uses a little bit of auto-tune, maybe they use it in a part of a verse or something like that. Like that's one thing. But like if your entire song is you auto-tune,
right.
Like auto-tune rapping, I'm like, you got to give me a little bit more than that, man.
Yeah.
But
that's my son's music right there. Let me jump in here real quick, man, because it does sound like you moved around a lot. You didn't stay just at the main stage because I mean, every band you're talking about, I mean, everybody's overlapping and you were moving around a lot. So I mean, so you would go and kind of check out a few songs and move around.
Yeah.
How was moving around? Was there how was the crowd? Was it all jam packed in there? Was there a lot of open space? How was
for the headliners? For the headliners, as the day progressed, it definitely was harder to move in. And it made me realize something. Even though I've never been to a European festival, whenever you see like those overhead crowd shots and everything, and I'm always just like, what about the guy back there? Like, and I was that guy back there. And so it's like, yes, you saw it on the Jumbotron and everything, but I felt like that was. And not for nothing, all things considered, if I really wanted to make my way to the front, I could have, because there's always going to be big pockets of people that you can kind of, sort of shimmy your way through. But at the same time, it's like, when Turnstile was on, we were kind of far back. Evanescence was also was pretty good also. But it's just weird when when you're watching the Jumbotron, because like that's when you get to kind of like they really focus in on like people's faces. So I think when you're watching it from the crowd, you're like, oh cool, there's Amy Lee, or there's Jonathan Davis. But like when they have the Jumbotron on, you're like, oh, she needs to take care of that pimple that's like right there. It almost, it's kind of a weird kind of thing, because it's like suddenly you're like kind of watching it in HD as opposed to almost being in the crowd watching them. So it's one of those things where I can't say it's like an issue or something that needs to be fixed or anything of that sort. It's just it is a weird perspective for me. But moving through the crowd, especially when you get to the second, the other two stages, it was pretty easy, Now my thing is System of a Down, right, in that I don't understand them. And the reason I say I don't understand them, not that I don't understand their music or their message or anything like that. What I don't understand is how they're able to command this crowd. First off, I mean, the crowd was 1,000% into them. Everybody was singing along, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. More power to those guys. I totally dig it. Their last record was 2005.
Wow.
And that was something where I was just, I just remember it was this weird, like, kind of revelation when I think about like all the years I spent at record labels, where it's like, oh, well, you got to keep the momentum going, or you got to put out a record every other year, or you got to, all these things that labels tell bands that they have to do to maintain momentum and everything. And then I was just like, these guys haven't put out a record in 18 years. Yeah. How were they able to do this? And I don't know if there's probably no answer to that question, to be perfectly honest with you, other than the fact that, they definitely tapped into something. They tapped into a particular part of the cultural mindset that just stuck, which is awesome. And I mean, maybe it's a Metallica thing too, where it took Metallica a couple of years to, put out Death Magnetic and all these kinds of things, and they still could play stadiums and all, and these huge places. But when it comes to, Metallica's been around since 83, System's been around since 98, 97, at its earliest. And that I would love to hear people's comments, to be honest with you, about that. Just what you think, why is it that System can still maintain this after not putting out an album for 18 years, Well,
I think you've got a couple of case studies in that. You've got Metallica, who never really stopped. They did take a little bit longer in between albums, but they've never really stopped. But you've also got Guns N' Roses, who, for the lack of a better analogy, I mean, they have 1.5 records. They have 2 records, really. You have Appetite and you have the Use Your Illusion stuff,
right?
And then you've got like a My Chemical Romance, who had 2-3 albums, tops, that people really dug. And I know they had more than that. Right. You've got those bands but though, like My Chemical Romance went away GNR went away.
That's true.
You know, and like, you know, absence makes the heart grow fonder. I mean, people love Glassjaw, but really, you know, Glassjaw is kind of a thing that, you know, they only had a couple of records. Like there's that thing about putting out a seminal record and then going away that people just absolutely like. If System would have kept putting out record after record after record, would they still be, oh my God, System of a Down's getting back together to play this festival, you know? Or would it be,
no, like that, I see your point for 100%. I totally see your point, because that was just the weird thing to me, because I was thinking to myself, like, as they're playing, you know, Sugar and all these songs that we all know, and I'm just sitting there like, I'm not hearing any other, like, any, like, because I don't know a whole lot off of Hypnotize, Mesmerize, or Steal This Album. I don't know a lot of those songs, but it sure didn't seem like a lot of those songs were being played. So I was kind of just like along the lines of like, okay, like they're playing the stuff I know, and I kind of lost touch with System for a while. But I think that's really what it is then. You know, it's just it is this kind of weird cultural zeitgeist for you know, putting them in that same category as My Chem. When I saw MCR at Aftershock last year, you know, everybody was going berserk. And you're right, like it's not like there was a new record that was coming out or anything of the sort, but you know, they hear Helena and everybody loses their collective mind. But I mean, that was really, I kind of looked at it from a weird, like, anthropology sort of, you know, aspect of it, you know, just kind of looking at it, because you look at all the different people who are into System, and it really is, it's everything from, like, you know, your typical whatever new metal kid, but then it's like you're looking at it and I'm like that guy literally looks like he belongs in an office building right now. Like, it's like just the age ranges and the demographics were so widespread that it really was like watching this really cool phenomena, you know. But they were still amazing. You know, Darren is still weird, like
right.
Some of the stuff he does and says, but it was really weird though, because like he would do stuff, he would say stuff where you're like, what is he talking about? But it would somehow, it seems all like non sequitur ramblings, but it would seamlessly go right into the next song. Like it was just this really, and that's where I was like, every time I was like, what is he they're going in. Okay, gotcha. You know, right. But it was funny though, they did mess up once or twice, and they were just like, it happens, and I was like, I guess so, you know. It's like, but yeah, they screwed up like one or two of the songs, where that was that's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know, I guess if you're the headliner, I'm like, that shouldn't be a thing, but again, they're human, but at the same time, like, shouldn't be a thing, you know. But overall, it was a really cool show. They definitely could have split it into 2 days, though. They absolutely could have, and I think if they did do that, I think they still would have commanded the crowd. I think the crowd would have still been there, especially if they just, you know, took a bunch of the bands and just went, okay, day one and day two. I think plenty of people, you know, would have been there for both days, you know, as long as you weren't like, okay, we're going to put Ministry, Thill Curl Cult, Skinny Puppy, and KMFDM on day one. Like, you know, if they had split those up. Like, I think people would have had a real, I mean, I think people would have had a good time regardless, but I definitely think it would have, you know, I just think it would have been easier on people. People could have seen the bands they wanted to see without having to sacrifice other bands. And last thing I'll say is, once the sun went down, the weather was fucking perfection. I mean, nice. It was warm without being hot, and there was a beautiful breeze throughout the entire night. And it was like, I was trying to, a buddy of mine, he had a medical condition. He was he was there. He was at Circus, and he was just like, I can't go. He's like, doctor said I can't, it's too hot and all that. And I was trying to get him to come down after the sun went down, because I was like, dude, this is the most perfect weather for a festival you will ever have. So you know, on the whole, I would give the whole thing a B+, A-. I you know, it wasn't terribly run. It wasn't like, you know, there were going to be lines for water during the day, obviously, so you just did have to wait at times, but otherwise I thought it was pretty okay, you know. But
I do like some of the bands that I saw kind of buy into it. I thought Korn, you know, Jonathan busting out the purple sequin, you know, Adidas tracksuit, you know, kind of just like that throwback of that. I think seeing them kind of play into it. How was Deftones with that? Did they do like was it more of an older set, or did they play like kind of just stuff throughout the career?
No, it was all throughout the career from what I heard. You know, I mean, I definitely heard stuff from White Pony. I heard stuff from I'm trying to remember if I heard stuff from Adrenaline. I don't remember, but I definitely heard stuff from Around the Fur, you know, but it's just watching them on stage. I was just like, man, this is so just, you know, I used to see them at clubs that held like 200 people, 100 people, you know, it's like, so, yeah. You know, same thing with Korn. I mean, I saw them at Coney Island High in New York, you know, it's like just these tiny places that we used to see some of these bands, you know, Downtime for System of a Down for me, you know, it's like, and to see them all at this level it's weird. It seems trite, but you're almost kind of like, fuck, I'm proud of these guys for really, right. You know, for going through what they went through, doing what they did. And then, you know, especially with Korn, like when, you know, you see Head back in the band and stuff like that, it's just, you know, you see that everyone has matured to a certain degree, but, you know, I think they all seem extremely appreciative of what they have. And I think that was kind of it. I think, I think the one last weird little gripe, and it's not even really a gripe, is just the name of the festival.
Right.
And I just didn't. That was the only part for me that I was just like, okay. Like When We Were Young, that makes sense. It's MCR, right. It's Glassjaw, it's all these bands. You know, I was like, I just, you know, don't see why they didn't just call this When We Were Young Part 2, or, you know, When We Were Youngish, or, you know, they should just kind of keep doing that. When we were really young, when we were kind of young, when we were sort of, you know. But I mean, but beyond that, I mean, you know, the name of a festival is what it is. But everyone had a good time. That's what I could tell. People were leaving. They were stoked. You know, we didn't see, at least I didn't see it. It wasn't like, you know, ambulances wheeling people out kind of thing. You know, that I didn't really see any of that. So it seemed like the crowd was pretty cool. Like, it didn't seem like there was any kind of like tough guy bro down happening anywhere, you know. So it just seemed like everybody was there to enjoy. So good on them, man. But
I'm trying to see from the time that you got there, there weren't a ton of the bands kind of reuniting for this thing. So I was trying to see if there was were there any bands that you saw you're like, ooh, maybe you guys shouldn't have done this?
Not really. To be honest with you, everybody, like the crowds were there for pretty much every band. Like I said, I didn't see any of the smaller bands, like, you know, Narrowhead and Fiddlehead and the other heads, right. But, you know, Pachinko and stuff like that. But I mean, I'd say the band that I saw that had kind of probably the smallest crowd in a way was Cradle of Filth. But I mean, that was literally the last band of the night. Yeah. You know? And I think by then, after System and people being outside for, you know, 15 hours, I think people were just kind of like, all right, you know, if you were there to see Cradle, you were there for that. But like, yeah. I think by then people were just kind of like, I think I'm good. You know, but I mean, otherwise, I don't think there was any band that felt particularly out of place. I mean, even when I saw like Skinny Puppy and Thrill Kill Cult, I was like, you know, are people going to really be there for this? But, you know, people were there, they were dancing, they were grooving, they were just loving it. So, you know, in a weird way, because this whole show was so diverse as far as the bands go, you know, whether you got your Flyleafs or you got your Systems or you got your Ministries, it kind of catered to everybody. So, in a way, if people are like, well, I never heard of this Ministry band, it's like they had an opportunity to check them out, you know. But it's never like you never saw anybody like, you know, seeing a band and just standing there like this for, you know, their 20 minutes. Right. Like there wasn't anything of that sort, you know.
That's the one thing with even the festivals that I attend, like, you know, Louder Than Life is here where I am, and Dropout Kings, who we will have on the show momentarily. You know, they were the first band on a side stage when I saw them, but they still had a big crowd. You know, like, right. Typically, like growing up, you would get to Ozfest, and those early crowds at Ozfest, you were like, if you play early in the day, you might not have many people at all. But I think that the kind of the festival crowds understand to get there a little early and to open the doors a little early, because I think the Ozfest that you and I did, I think there was a band playing as they open the doors, you know. It's like that's insane. Like, to open the doors a little bit.
Yeah.
What's that?
I always hate when they do that. Like when, you know, they have a band go on at 7:30 and like the doors are at 7. So it's like, there's like 8 people in the crowd because everybody's trying to, you know, get through security and everything like that. That's something I was never a fan of. However, I remember, Ozfest 99, the last show was out here in San Bernardino, and Slipknot was the first band on the second stage at 9:30 in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning. And I remember getting in, and it was literally, I don't know, 1,000 of us, 1,500 of us, like full on sprinting to the second stage just to catch Slipknot. So it's like, and I think that's kind of it. It's the bands I felt bad for back then were whoever was playing the main stage, because that's when you have like 9 people sitting in the crowd. Like that was that's one of the reasons Queens of the Stone Age ended up dropping off the tour, because they were like, dude, we're first on the main stage and there's like 3 people we're playing to every day. Like, what's the fucking point? So
playing to the guy eating the nachos.
Yeah, totally, right? Yeah, just or some dude who's just already like passed out drunk in the seats. And it's like, yo, dude, it's like 10 a.m. What the fuck? But I think that's kind of it. I think that is the mentality now when people are doing these like Danny Wimmer shows and stuff like that is to get there early. So, because you might find a band that you are suddenly like, oh my God, like where's this band been all my life? Or to be able to get in on a band early on, that is definitely one of my regrets by not seeing, Fiddlehead and some of these other bands, Scowl and whatnot, because I'm like, shit, man, I don't, not that I was there for them, but there's nothing I love more than being like, okay, like these guys definitely have my attention, or
right.
We're putting this on Spotify on the way home, really see what's going on. I like stuff like that. We also did catch Seven Dust. I forgot about that. And I mean, those guys don't disappoint. We talked about them before. So I think they're the James Brown of hard rock. I think they are.
Well, they were the band that the power went out on. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. Because we had just gotten there not too long before they went on. Okay. So they were one of those bands. We saw like 2 songs and then we kind of moved along just to make sure that we could see everybody else. But yeah, there was a couple of that happened a couple of times for a couple of bands here and there. And I think, like I said, I think that's what prevented Ministry from playing their full set, and it ended up pushing things back, like I said, by about 10 or 15 minutes. And unfortunately, when you have, and I think that's the other part of it too, having all these bands on one day is that if something does mess up, it gives you no leeway.
Right.
And it's almost like if you're that close to each other, one little slip up is going to cause a domino effect that is very difficult to work your way back from. Right. I think that's probably the one that's like my one real big takeaway is that, like, if something like that does happen, then you have no buffer room to maneuver around it, but beyond that, man, it was a really great show, but that drive back was brutal. We didn't get back 4:30 in the morning. I was like, and we just like, me and my wife just like slept the entire next day. She's like, it's Mother's Day. I'm sleeping. I'm like, that's the best Mother's Day present I could possibly give anybody. Is sleep.
Did you run into anybody? Did you see anybody, running around? Did you, talk to people?
Not a whole lot. We saw a couple of friends here and there. We ran into our buddy Ira Black and a couple of people that we knew. Nice. But it's funny, after going through Facebook and everything and whatnot, it's like, I feel like so many times we must have just passed people. I was looking at a buddy of mine when he was like, yeah, waiting for Ministry. And I'm like, dude, you were 20 feet behind me. Like, I'm looking at where his pictures were. And I'm like, how did we not meet each other? So unfortunately, we didn't really get to do that. But also when we did meet people, I was very specific with my wife, where I was like, I don't want to be in one place for too long. I want to keep wandering. I want to keep experiencing kind of whatever is going on. If we meet people along the way, then cool. But I really did want it to just kind of be me and her sort of doing, kind of on our own agenda, as opposed to like, because like we were hanging out with some people, and then finally I was like, why don't we move on? Because they were just kind of standing here. They're standing here. There's bands playing. I feel like we're missing out by just standing here. And these are all people we know from LA, so we could see them anytime, whereas, I really want to make sure that we try to get the best festival experience we possibly can. So.
I saw a ton of people like you said, you were reading the Facebook, you were seeing all the things, man. It was crazy how many people from around the country descended on Las Vegas for this festival. And, that was a part of that was a part of the missing out that I was just like, man, I should have went to this. But, I mean, from what I can tell, though, man, it just seemed like everybody was having a good time. How many people do you think were there? Did you get a head count at any point?
I'm not very good at that sort of thing. I mean, I would say, let's put it this way. I would say, considering how far back we were from seeing like any of the main stage bands, that there was at least 25 to 30,000 people there. That's just my guesstimate. Take it for what it's worth. I mean, if the numbers come out and they were like, oh no, there's 90,000 people, I'd be like, okay, so I'm not very good at this.
Well, see, Knotfest Iowa was 30,000, so
yeah, I'd say it was about that.
Okay, wow,
it was about that. Not as big of a field as Knotfest Iowa was, but it was definitely, I'd say about that, man. I'd say between 25 and 30 is what I would love to see what the numbers were. To be honest with you, I wonder if that's actually online anywhere.
I don't know. Maybe we'll have to look into it. But yeah, I definitely was watching the videos, and a couple of people kept posting little snippets of like almost every band, and yeah, I Sick New World 2. Let's hopefully that happens, and I'll start planning now.
Yeah, right. Seriously. Well, you know what? It says 12,000.
What?
It says a total of 12,000 fans have snapped up tickets. So I guess, I guess I'm just, like I said, my guesstimations are a little bit off, but
I'm gonna call shenanigans on 12,000.
It's just, I just looked it up. Attendance numbers in the Sick New World. Let's see if it says it here.
Yeah.
Him was Vile was also good. I forgot about him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was cool. But we only stuck around for a few songs because same thing. It's like that's really when the headliners were going on and everything like that. Let's see.
12,000 just seems almost like too little. I mean, like when I would go see, Pantera in the 90s. I mean, that was 20,000 at a amphitheater. So I mean, you got this massive bill. I just honestly then that makes me think that the money doesn't match up to the guarantees and all that stuff. So
I mean,
I see the Las Vegas Review Journal here. It does say 12,000.
12,000, yeah. Man. So, but you're right though. I mean, it's like when you think about some of the stadiums that Metallica has played, whether it's like Giant Stadium or something that, like, that's a lot of those football stadiums are 20, 30,000 people. But yeah, 12,000 is the number that I just saw online, just like you did. So I'm curious what the most accurate numbers are, but it was sold out. That much I know for a fact. It was definitely sold out. So
awesome.
Yeah, so we'll see what's what.
All right, and with your merch hat on, did you see any good merch?
Nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, obviously a lot of Sick New World merch, a lot of like bucket hats and stuff like that. It's funny too because I always look, as a merch guy, I always look at kind of like what people are selling and whatnot. And there's so many things that I'm always surprised that nobody does sell, like, and same thing when you have so many sponsors and stuff like that, there's so many things you can have, but like nobody's making like hand fans, like nobody, there was no like those almost like battery powered spritz bottles. Like me and my wife, we walked in with like a spray bottle, like a small one, so we could just kind of mist ourselves, but there was like nobody was like, I'm like, dude, you guys could have sold a zillion of those. Like everybody and their mother would have bought one, but nice. It's one of those things where I'm always like, when it's one thing to make your like, oh, Sick New World appearance shirt, but there's so many other things that people can do that could really, even if people drop them on the floor or whatever, it's like, or just take them to different shows. Like I said, like a hand fan, it's like that goes well at Ozfest, it goes well at Mayhem, it goes well at whatever Blue Ridge, Aftershock. That's something that you can bring with you to other shows. Something with the spray bottle. Another thing is like the clear drawstring bags. Like you had to have a clear bag and all these kinds of things, but it's like, why not sell those? Like people need stuff. I mean, the amount of people I saw holding like merch and
right.
I was like, really, nobody's got a bag? Like that's strange to me, but I don't know. Hopefully that'll prompt somebody to make them and to come to War Machine merch to get them made.
There you go. maybe the Dropout Kings can come to you for that, man. And speaking of Dropout Kings, we'll do a little segue there. We will now kick to our interview with Adam Ramey of Dropout Kings. They're out on tour right now with Ill Niño. The new album Riot Music is out now, so make sure to check that out. And so we will talk to Adam Ramey, and then Ro and I will be back with you momentarily. All right, guys, let's welcome Adam Ramey to New Pod here, notfest.com. Yes. Adam, man, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
You know, it's funny. We were talking gas stations before we started recording. We'll say it like that. And the worst thing about being on tour is like stopping at a gas station, and then the next exit, it's like a metropolis of gas stations and Taco Bells and everything else. There's nothing worse than the janky gas station stop opposed to the good one.
Dude, that literally happens at least 5 times in a week on tour.
You're right.
It's so annoying.
Well, man, you were out on tour with Ill Niño, man. How's the tour going so far?
Going good, man. It's been fun. Just, living. They're pretty chill. And, yeah, it's just been super relaxed. Just going through it. It's kind of crazy.
Nice. Yeah, I used to, when I worked at Roadrunner, that was they were always one of the more fun bands to work with, you know?
Yeah. No, they're super chill.
Fans are loyal, everyone's into it. Everyone knows why they're there.
Yeah, that's definitely. That's great.
Well, I was gonna kind of bring that up with Ill Niño, and then obviously doing the stuff with Head PE and Crazy Town and DJ Lethal and stuff. Man, how kind of cool is it? Kind of the old guard is kind of embracing you guys.
No, it's cool, man. Definitely, like especially when we first started like going through all that with all of them, and it was just cool because it's just like I grew up listening to this stuff, and like now we're here, so it's felt very full circle.
Very cool
is the best way I could describe it.
Now, so you were on Napalm Records for a little while, and now you guys are on Suburban Noize. I was kind of curious as to like, A, kind of why the switch, and B, like what the benefits of the switch were.
Yeah, so with Napalm, it was really just a 1 album deal. But yeah, we went through the whole cycle, and just kind of we're like, let's explore options and everything. And I feel like their fan base wasn't super into what we were doing. So like, dude, if you go and look at like the YouTube comments from our first record, I mean, people are just shitting on us.
Yeah.
In multiple languages, so we're like, oh man. It made the videos blow up a lot quicker, that's for sure. But we just wanted to find something where it was more aligned with that, and so we kind of parted ways there, and then we got on Stay Sick Records, which later became Modern Empire. Okay. And that really, we put the Glitch Gang album out on that, and that really gave us like a newfound platform, and it really just like got us past this plateau that we were at. And then once again, that was like a 1 album cycle, and then we started talking to, I think it was Century Media and Suburban Noize, and it was around the COVID time, so things were a little weird with Century Media. Like they wanted to sign a bunch of people, but then like COVID just kept getting extended, and so they're like, it's up in the air. Like we still want to do it, but this is the situation. So
right.
We started just talking more and more to Kevin, and which is the guy that owns Suburban Noize, and we were like, I like this guy, and he truly believes in like what we're doing and everything. And, he like the marketing stuff and everything, like he just sees it, so pretty much did this newest record, Riot Music, with him. And it's been great, man. And I'd say, that's a benefit, like Kevin, he's just been in the game for a long time, and, like people like him in the industry, it makes it a lot easier for people to want to work with you when they like your team, and
right.
Once again, he shares the vision, and he puts resources and time into it. And you know, a lot of the times it's hard to say that for a lot of other people that are like that run a label. You know, it's you don't really get that kind of commitment a lot of the times. It's a really fair deal that we have with him too. So it's been extremely chill. You know, there's no reason to overcomplicate things. You know, so it just works like that.
Very cool. Good, man. Congrats, dude. I'm stoked about that. That's a great thing to hear.
I appreciate that. Yeah. It's been great.
So when you go back to those old Napalm videos and you're seeing all the different languages and you're like, I think this one might be a good one. And you hit the Google Translate and you're like, God damn it. Like it's again, like they're just ripping us again, man. That had to have been tough. But you're also, you're not supposed to read the comments in any language, I guess.
Right.
No. Yeah. That goes without saying for sure. You know, like we were doing things where we just like read hate comments and try to like react to them and stuff, just like make light of it, you know?
Right.
But yeah, just don't even read the comments.
Right. They're gonna just start picking apart weird things too.
Oh, you know? Yeah, like
why does that guy's eyebrows look like that? And you're like, what?
No, literally though, it's like, all right, I'm gonna go walk off a cliff real quick.
Seriously.
I always joke. I interviewed Jason Newsted of Metallica, and I was so excited to get it, and I put it on YouTube, and I'm ready. And then, like some of the comments coming in, I was wearing a backwards hat, and somebody goes, "This guy wears his hat weird." I'm like, "Really? That's what you got from this interview about the Black Album?"
Yeah, dude. It's just like, come on, can we just not? Let me just exist and not hate myself for a day, please.
Right. Life's tough enough, dude. Like, I need to work on that too.
Exactly. Yeah.
It took a minute for Riot Music to come out. Like there was kind of a temporary date, and then it got pushed back a little bit. Man, what happened there?
It was good question, man. It was like a mixture of different things. Just the timing just wasn't right. You know, we were still trying to make some like last minute connections, like meet, you know, our album, like the actual physical CDs were like getting kind of delayed, trying to get those. And it was just like one of those storm things that just kind of snowballed into each other. But, you know, honestly, like for me, everything happens for a reason, I think. And, you know, I think getting it pushed back a bit and, you know, coming out on May 5th, I'm like super into numerology stuff. So I'm just like, the numbers are in our favor, like, you know, all this. And then it did, you know, it did really well, like charting wise and everything. And, you know, I was just like, this was supposed to be this way. And, you know, like me and Bill, we recorded the vocals. I mean, that was 2021, you know, so like we've been really working on this for a while instrumentally and everything. But yeah, it definitely took a lot longer than I wanted to, but it's just the way it is sometimes, and we just got to roll with the punches. But yeah, no, it was definitely delayed a lot, but glad we finally got it out. It felt good.
You know, I got a question actually about 2020 and 2021. When it comes to like COVID, obviously so many things just kind of stopped, you know, like just a dead stop for a lot of people, a lot of things. When it came to writing a record, though, did you find that time was better to like kind of really flesh out all the ideas, or did it feel like, oh shit, we're just stuck?
Yeah, no, like I feel like with us particularly, like we were pretty proficient online and everything, and like the thing about COVID is like it didn't matter how big or small your band was, it evened out the playing field, right? And the ones that pivoted, you know, excelled, and the ones that didn't kind of like petered out a bit, or at least got delayed in their development.
Got pushed back.
Yeah, so like we had a really good base there, and you know, I feel like that's really when we started coming into the frame a lot more. But as far as the recording process goes, I feel like it was much easier to hunker down somewhere, you know, and just like only worry about that and think about that, because the rest of the world is stopped around you, you know. So I think that made it a lot easier in that respect. But yeah, you know, I mean, I feel like it was almost like, you know, whenever like the bubonic plague was happening, and then like there was a Renaissance era, I felt like it was going to be something similar where, instead of only having a month to work on a record like most bands do, like you have like literal years, you know, to work on something. So yeah, I feel like, and I mean the albums that have been coming out from a lot of people recently, you know, the last year and stuff, I mean, I feel like everybody's like really reaching new highs and everything like that, you know, creatively, sonically, all of those things. So I think, yeah, it's kind of crazy how it really threw a wrench in the gears of like the industry and you know, the whole process. But yeah, I definitely felt like it made it a lot easier to really just focus on the music. It's funny too, if you go and listen to back on the record, there's a few lines of like, you could tell it was still during COVID, you know, like just things we were saying. So it's just funny, you know, I mean, like, oh man, yeah, I remember when we wrote that and we were just at this empty studio that literally no one was there except us. It was at the Suburban Noize office, and we were just, whole office was empty, completely dark. It was crazy, man. Then you go there now and there's tons of people, and
now there's all this activity.
Yeah.
I guess that is kind of cool, because that's what I noticed during that time too, when it just came to working and whatnot, was just, you know, okay, cool, I'm not going to a bar, or I'm not going to a club, or I'm not driving to work or whatever. It's like once all that sort of stopped, it was kind of like, okay, like now's really a good time to step back and really reevaluate, when we don't really get that reset button that often.
Yeah, dude, that's super insightful, because like literally, yes, like we definitely went through that 100%.
You know, it's funny you brought up the bubonic plague, man. So many bangers were written during the bubonic plague, you know?
Bro, right.
The bad part about COVID is you didn't know it was going to be 2.5 years, 3 years, however long it was. It was always like, maybe you'll tour next month. Maybe you'll tour next month. You know, you never really knew when it was going to be kind of quote unquote over. And so you never really knew how long you had to write the record, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's funny that we're talking about this right now, because literally earlier on this drive, we were talking about how I started like journaling like randomly, because I'm just gonna try. I've never done it, whatever. And like, there's months of time, I think like a year or two of time, that's just like normal stuff, right? And then all of a sudden, the whole thing starts turning into like this messed up Stephen King novel, dude. Where I'm like, but it was kind of cool. I'm like glad I was writing stuff at the time, because I literally, like, you could see in real time how I was thinking and like how crazy it was, and all the things that that everyone was being told initially versus later on. And like for instance, like, oh, it's only going to be 2 weeks, you know? And then, like, so I write that in there. Yay, we're going to shut down for 2 weeks, whatever. And then like literally months go by and I'm like, I don't know if it's ever going to end. Yeah. It's just a weird time, man. It's funny that we were talking about that though. That's pretty interesting.
Did you feel like you went from kind of like, all right, cool, like we're in this album cycle? Did it start becoming like a all work and no play, make Jack a dull boy kind of thing, where you were starting to sort of like, you know, kind of be like, okay, like now creativity sort of just like.
Yeah. I feel like it was just because of the turmoil of like the uncertainty of everything else, you know, like, is touring ever coming back? You know, like, logistically, you know, it's like, oh, you want vinyl, or you want like just anything physical, like shirts, like, I mean, the supply chain was just destroyed, you know, and like,
you don't gotta tell
like me and our old guitarists pay attention to like logistical things like that, and we just know how like one small thing can like set things back on the supply chain, that just domino effect. And now, you know, 2 weeks extra here, a month extra there. I mean, now you're like a 4-month, 5-month lead time on something, you know, that if you're lucky,
only take like 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Yep.
You've got Joe Cotela of DED on the album, man. And I was wondering, have you known Joe for a long time? I'm assuming kind of being in that Arizona scene from back in the day.
Yeah. I've known Joe for quite some time, just because I think Man-Made Machine was his other project that he had that was epic. But you know, he was more of just someone I knew of. But then when I really started doing the Dropout Kings thing, and then, you know, when DED started really taking off, when they worked with Feldman, you know, like that's whenever we really started like talking. And yeah, so we became like really close friends since then. And, you know, we knew we wanted to do something with them for a while because the fan base is so comparable. I mean, we're both from AZ, you know, so it was cool getting to do that and like flesh it out. And, you know, they're always so busy and stuff. And so it was cool making that happen. And I'm glad we did that.
All right, man. We'll wrap it up so you guys can get back on the road, man. Now that Riot music is out and now that you're out touring and stuff, man, how does it feel? How does the fan reaction to the new album? Everything good on the road? Yeah, no, it's such a weight off my shoulders getting it out finally and getting it out to the world and everything. And you know, it was different than what we've been doing. So, you know, it has been a bit of a mixed bag as far as the reaction goes, but that's the thing. I'm like, I would rather people talk about it, even if they don't like it, than say nothing, you know? So it's cool, you know, but most people like it, you know, and I feel like, you know, like the shows and the turnouts and the people, like you could just tell they really want to be there and talk to you about, you know, the record and how they felt about it. So it's been great, you know, and it just keeps continuing to do cool stuff. And, you know, I just can't wait to even just start getting to work on this next one, you know. But yeah, it's been a really cool experience so far. And it's definitely like one of my favorite things that we've done so far. But yeah, no, it's been great, man.
So let me ask you a question, just because, you know, our podcast is called New Pod, and, you know, a lot of it has to do with you know, what a lot of people consider to be new metal and all these kinds of things. You know, I'm not sure exactly how old you are and kind of where you come 30. In. You're 30. Okay, so yeah, so you're so when new metal was kind of a thing, you were just definitely like kind of growing up and everything. But I mean, lately, you know, maybe not lately, but like, you know, in the past, new metal was considered this like you know, this like this slight
bad word.
Yeah. Like, you know, no one would claim it back then. Yeah.
right. And so my question is this: is like, for somebody who is younger, I mean, younger than me, I would imagine younger than Josh as well. Do you look at it as an insult, or is it kind of like, no, man, this is where it is now? Because it seems like it envelops so many things now that, you know.
Right.
You know, I mean, people used to call Ill Niño, you know, new metal and all these kinds of things. And now, you know, with you guys doing what you do, where it's like trap metal, like, do you find that people are still just like, oh, new metal band? Or do you go, no, man, fucking new metal, trap metal, whatever the fuck metal it is, you know? Like, I'm just kind of curious about your take on that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I personally think, like, people, no matter what, are going to want to quantify what you're doing and put it in a box and like dissect it. You know, they're going to do that regardless, right? So for me, it's like, I try to make that easier for people to be like, yeah, it is new metal, or it is like trap metal, like whatever you want to call it, it whatever you want to call it. But that way they can at least quantify it in a couple of different boxes so they can understand what it is easier, you know? So, and, you know, it's like I grew up on all that stuff really with like new metal and everything. So I thought it was cool. And I mean, that was like one of the whole ideas behind me like starting the band was like, I saw this wave of it coming back and I'm like, well, I've always wanted to do a band like this, you know? Right. So I pretty much just put the pieces together and yeah, no, I don't mind claiming it. I love it, you know, and like, new metal has a built-in fan base, really. You know, it's one of those things that kind of just, it makes it easy for people to quantify it. And, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And because they're going to do it anyways. Like, well, I'm not going to fight it. You know what I mean? Like,
right. And it's like to be in the same category as a band like Korn or Deftones or System, it's like, that's not exactly a horrible company.
No, not at all. You know? System of a Down's like probably one of my favorite bands of all time.
Right.
Well, cool, man. Well, last question for you, man. You're at a gas station. You got to run in. What's your go-to, snack or your go-to? Do you go for the fountain drink? Do you go for a candy bar? What do you go for when you run into the gas station?
Dude, it really depends on the vibe. It depends on the mood. But no matter what, there's some level of caffeine involved. 1,000%. Probably, I like the Monster Nitros. These ones.
There we go.
These ones are good. I like these. Red Bull, pistachios. I like that as a snack. That's one of my favorites. And gotta have the beef jerky, man. Gotta have the beef jerky. Beef jerky's amazing. Trying to think of sunflower seeds too. I gotta do it sparingly though, because it'll destroy your tongue after a while in your lips.
Right.
Yeah, you get the sunflower seeds and they end up everywhere in the van. They're everywhere in your pockets. They're everywhere.
100%. But yeah, I think I'm gonna say that those are my go-to, and then any kind of like gummies, like sour gummies and stuff like that. I love my jam right there. I love that. Yeah, that's probably the go-to. That's a standard. That's a starter pack. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna tell you, man. You've got a wide variety, man. I anytime I've traveled, it's like this, or this. It's never like, oh, I love this and that. And then, the variety is the spice of life for Adam. Right?
Hey, man. When you go to Buc-ee's, you gotta have variety. Okay, like you can't just go to Buc-ee's and be like, I want Skittles. It's like, Buc-ee's has their own fucking cream, like chocolate cream pie and whatnot. Like you can't just pick one thing.
I feel like one of the most paralyzing things about like Buc-ee's or something similar is like, dude, there's so many options that I'm like, what do I want right now? Like, anything right now.
Right, everybody's in the van like, dude, we gotta go, and you're like, dude, I've only gotten through letter M on the alphabet of snacks that I want.
Exactly. And it's funny too, because like in Europe there's no real big gas stations like that, so like it's such a, you're like, oh damn, like I don't even like want anything from here.
Right.
And all the drinks are warm as hell, dude. That's another thing, man. I'm like, what? Why are they all warm?
Yeah.
Crazy thing too is the gas station cuisine has moved up so fast too. Like, dude, you can go in and actually get an actual meal rather than the roller hot dog or like a taquito or something. Now you can actually go get like a beef brisket burrito or something.
Dude, yeah, especially when you hit up like Wawa's or like Sheetz or QT or something like that, and they got that whole. That's a lifesaver, man. Whoever had the foresight to think about that was a beast. Yeah. And we salute that person or those people.
Very much so.
Yeah, because sometimes you get those roller hot dogs. We call them the dolphin skin hot dogs, where it's just like there's just something weird happening with those things.
Well, awesome, man. Well, Adam Ramey, man, it's been a blast having you here on New Pod. Riot Music is out now. And make sure to check out Dropout Kings out on tour right now with Ill Niño. And what's kind of the future right now? What's going on? We got some other tours coming up.
Yeah. We're playing Blue Ridge in September. I'm sure we're probably gonna route some kind of some dates going there and back. I imagine. There's a couple things in the works. Potentially that we're talking about, kind of just trying to work through that. But yeah, just trying to do some festival stuff and trying to see what else we can get by the end of this year. That's, it's one of those things where it's kind of it's just up in the air. But just trying to stay busy there and just always trying to work on new material and, just that's really it, man. Just taking it as it comes.
Right.
Well,
awesome, man. We'll be on the road, man. That's for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Now run in and pee and grab some beef jerky.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's exactly what I'm about to do.
All right,
man. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Safe travels, buddy.
Take it easy, guys. Appreciate you. Thanks for having us.
All right, huge thank you to Adam Ramey for taking some time on tour at the gas station there. That's always fun, man. Talking to somebody like that. But Adam Ramey, good dude. Make sure to check out Riot Music out now from the Dropout Kings. And Adam was a good dude, man.
Yeah, no, definitely. I loved what he had to say about the time during COVID. I mean, I think that's a really you know, for us for the last couple of years, you know, COVID just became such a game changer, whether it became, you know, coming up with something new, something breaking apart and kind of disintegrating only to come back as something different. I mean, it really gave everyone a brand new perspective. And I like hearing people's stories about that, not so much about what, you know, kind of boring shit they did during COVID, but more like, you know, what COVID inspired in people, what that off time really helped people understand. And I think that's a really important thing, you know, like for us in a weird way, it was almost like, where were you on 9/11? But now it's almost like right. A new way to say it is kind of like, what were you doing during COVID? Like, how were you improving your life? How are you taking that dead time and making it work for you? And I think that's a really important thing to find out from bands. You know?
Yeah, man. The wife got furloughed during that time, so I was a essential worker, so I would go to work and come home, and she was just bored out of her mind. She's like, we started going for walks and like a lot of Monopoly and board games and drinking wine, and you know, and she was just like, she was getting stir crazy and about ready to murder somebody if she didn't get back to work.
Yeah, no, my wife is a school nurse, and so without having any school to go back to, I mean, she was lucky in that she was still getting paid, which was awesome. But like, you know, there was not much, you know, she was doing research, but you know, the news was changing all the time, so there was no way of knowing. Kind of like, okay, is this legit now? Is that legit now? Is this, you know? So you know, she would just kind of be online for a little while, and after a few months of that, I'm like, you're not really working. Just so you know, but her school very much takes care of her. Whereas for me, you know, not having events to make merch for, you know, we did do some merch for some bands that were doing online stuff, but to be perfectly honest with you, like my eBay stuff was killing it because nobody was going out to bars and clubs and shows and stuff. So people were just flush with money and they were just like, I'll buy that, you know? So for me, that was kind of a good thing in that I was like, all right, cool. Like at least it balanced it out very well for me, you know, but it also did give me a chance to like, we revamped our website. We did a lot of that kind of, you know, it was a good time to get busy work done that we just never really thought about, you know?
Well, that was the, even with the show, I've talked about it in the past, but I mean, even through the COVID, you know, that was, you know, got the good webcam, upgraded the internet, got the studio lights, you know, built the, you know, the studio area, things like that. Like it was because prior to the, you know, lockdowns and things like that, you know, this was just a phoner type of interview show. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, no, we'll do Zoom, we'll do StreamYard, we'll do all this stuff. So I was like, all right, I guess I got to upgrade.
Yeah. It was a good time for an innovation. You know, it's like there was some, and that's what and I'll just kind of end my part on this whole thing. It was, it's funny because even this year, as of what month are we in? May right now?
May.
Like, I think as early as like February and January, people would just be like, I haven't been to a show in 2 years. And I'm like, okay, like, really? Like, I'm like, I've been going to shows since like, we were masking up at shows and whatnot, but like, I was still going to shows, but like people were like, you know, like, they look like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. Like, here is it, you know? And I'm like, dude, I just went to Target to get some groceries. Like, you can leave your house, you know, like just mask up and, you know, use the hand sanitizer. It's not a big deal. But like these people who became like these like weird recluses and, you know, or like apocalypse, you know, like survivalists out of nowhere. I'm like, okay, you got a lot of canned beef products in your house, but like, did you learn anything? Did you try anything different? That's why I liked watching like, oh, I figured out how to make sourdough bread. I'm like, well, you know, it's not exactly your life-saving activity, but at the same time, it was just cool to see people, you know, really just using that time and trying to figure out a new way to do things. So.
And I think you were right, you know, talking about the, the writing the music during COVID and it was funny because I thought as soon as COVID was over, we would get all these great records. But I really think all the great records from COVID are coming out now. Like they're all starting to stream out because I mean, there's been so much good music coming out lately. And I think that this is really a byproduct of COVID.
I do too. And I think I think those years especially I think it'll continue being something that people will sort of pull that inspiration from, you know? which is, I mean, especially for metal, I think that's always great, because you always want to come from that place of that. So whether it's that emotional, I don't want to say emptiness, but like just kind of like that sort of like that null feeling of like, or that uncertainty of what's going to happen. I think that's why I'm convinced that so much good music comes out of like the New England and Northeast of America, just because it's so gloomy and drab and crappy. Same thing with Seattle, with grunge. Yeah. When you're just stuck inside, it's like, that's when you're going to really start pumping out music and being more creative typically.
We really need to study the bubonic plague and see like what music was written during the bubonic plague that came out afterwards.
That's true, but like we were saying, it's like that's after that was over, was you had this renaissance, of art and all these kinds of things. So I think it's definitely I think it's true here as well. We did have a post-COVID renaissance of new technology, of new ways of looking at things. So
I agree. Well, I think that will do it for a new pod here on notfest.com. Once again, huge thank you to Adam Ramey for taking some time and talking gas station food with us and stuff.
Yeah, right. Talking Buc-ee's.
I will say, man, it's funny looking back on, like my Primer 55 touring days was the early 2000s and all that era. And I know you toured a lot, around with Soulfly and everything back in the day. And it's night and day, man. Like gas stations now are like these meccas. And back then it was like you might be lucky to get a roller hot dog,
Right. Yeah, I survived off of like protein bars and like orange juice when I was on tour, because just the food that people were bringing onto the bus, I was like, that looks horrifying. And now it's like you have you have these like Buc-ee's style like gas the truck stops that are just like full on like restaurants, and the amount of options now is so insane and crazy. But hey, if it helps bands tour easier and at least get some food in their stomachs, like so they can actually play a show and not be miserable all the time, that's only a good thing in my opinion.
Absolutely. Well, that will do it here for us here, New Pod here on notfest.com. As always, I'm Joshua Toomey. That is Ro Coley, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Yes, we will. Stay metal, everybody.